Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast November live stream. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button today. By subscribing that, by clicking that subscribe button below. Not going great already. Welcome to this live stream. Joining me is Charter Nicholson. Charter, please go ahead and give yourself a bit of an introduction.
Thanks for having me on, Dave. First of all, I am Charter Nicholson. I'm with Blue Collar Investments on X and TikTok, slowly starting up my YouTube channel as well. Man, I'm just on here trying to help out fellow blue collar workers and veterans make better money choices. And along the way, I've met a bunch of really awesome people like yourself and others, and I'm learning a lot myself along the way. It's been a really fun ride the past couple months.
Yeah, awesome. So a few things there. First of all, this is an open live stream. We've had some guests that were not able to join us. So if you want to come on as a guest, the link is pinned at the top of the chat. So just click on the link if you want to come on, and it's going to just be an open live chat, and that's that. A few things that you mentioned right off the top: blue collar investing and being a veteran. So everybody knows I'm in Canada. You're in the U.S.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, the Canadian and U.S. militaries, well, Canada and the U.S. are obviously very close allies, and Canada and the U.S. militaries work together. So I do not feel out of place at all saying thank you for your service. That's, very important to all of us here in North America, keeping our freedoms and the things that we enjoy.
No, yeah, thank you. I got to, I had the honor of really Canadian Special Forces guy. You guys rock.
Nice. That's good. Good to hear. And then, the blue collar investing thing, which is, I think, very unique because in this day and age, we see a lot of the blue collar workers making extremely good money. Electricians, plumbers, carpenters, HVAC technicians, and all sorts of other, tradespeople that are, making 70, 80, 90, over $100,000 a year. And I guess maybe talk to that mindset of what are they doing with that money? What are you doing with that money?
So that's the whole reason the channel came about. Up until May of this year, I was a high school teacher. And me and another one of the trade school teachers actually left at the same time because the money had just gotten so ridiculous in our fields. It was getting hard to ignore. And then as you just saw a few minutes ago, I very recently had a third child, and raising 3 children on a teacher's salary was doable, but it was very difficult. And ultimately it just didn't allow for me the lifestyle that I wanted for myself and my children and my family. So I came back into engineering. I'm a lonely engineer. I'm embedded with a team of electricians. So I am very blue collar. I work in a steel mill. I get to work beside electricians day in and day out. I actually carpool with an electrician. And so I got to see that there was a lot of guys in the industry making $120,000+ a year, and they were spending their money on, $90,000 trucks. They're spending their money on, letting their wives talk them into a 3,000, 3,500 5-bedroom square foot house with 5 bedrooms when they've got 1 kid, stuff like that. Got a lot of my friends that are house poor or truck poor or even boat poor. And I'm like, guys, you have a financial opportunity here to probably be retired within 10 or 15 years with the incomes that you're making if you just invested it into something safe. And, a lot of the large market cap, small cap, international index funds, really, when you look at the historical data, they are safe to invest in. And so I just started tearing through podcasts whenever I took this new job, because I do work 75 miles from home. So I drive an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half every single day. So I just wanted to take that time and be proactive with it. So I started really learning on it and got turned on to X, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. And I've just been talking to people left and right since then. And I'm realizing that I do have a unique perspective on it. And there's been a lot of people that are interested in hearing my perspective. And it's been predominantly positive feedback that I've gotten from the community. And I've just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, very true. Actually, I found you, and so first shout out to Kelly. We know her on Twitter at Frogmoon Mama. She was supposed to be on here as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she had came down with COVID, but she was the one that put me in your direction, saying, "Hey, get Blue Collar Investor on, and I'll come on." And so that was thanks to Kelly. And Kelly,
Yeah.
hopefully you feel better soon, and we can eventually have you on the show. Um, so yeah, you've mentioned a lot of very key issues there. Guys that are, you might be making a lot of money, but if you're spending a lot of money as well, if you're buying that
Yeah.
brand new $90,000 pickup truck, you're not getting any further ahead, right? So,
Hmm.
or the $100,000 boat, or like you said, you don't need a 3,500 square foot house if you've only got a small family, and
Right.
you've got, if you're planning on growing your family, then I don't know, maybe there's some justification there, but I think it's hard. Even you can have a family of like yourself, 5 people, and you don't need a house that big, right?
No, I mean we live in a. I mean, and our house to me is still pretty big, but we live in a. It's just over 2,200 square foot. And we got our house for a deal. I mean, we spent $100,000 on our house, and
Yeah.
we're getting
Wow.
ready to move, and we're going to ultimately going to be turning this into a rental. But we didn't buy the max of what we could. We bought very, very low on what we qualified for. And it's made all the difference in the world for us, because even while I was a teacher making, $40,000 a year, I was still able to put money back into the 401b. It's like kind of a version of a 401k, but I was
Right.
able to put money back in my retirement, even while we were still making so little money. And my wife is currently full-time in school. So I was the only income during that time. And it's possible at low incomes with a bigger family to still put money back. You just have to be a little bit more disciplined.
Yeah, discipline is a key for sure. So as you know, before we started recording, I was telling you that I was watching the episode of you with Chris at Options Trader Chris on his channel, the $1 Million Earnings podcast or channel, YouTube
Yes,
channel.
sir.
And so it helped me get to know you a little bit better. And so I'm going to kind of stick with vehicles here for a second, because personally I drive a 2002 F250. So it is kind of a bigger
Nice.
truck, but it's also 22 years old. It's paid for, right?
Hey, yep. I have a 1985 Dodge sitting in the parking lot, sitting in the driveway right now. So I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, is as I was listening to that episode, you were talking about a mid 90s, 95 or 96 Jeep, and then like a 2002 or something Lexus as well.
Yeah. Yes.
And I understand now you have a newer vehicle because you do drive so much,
Yes.
but hats off to you for just driving those old vehicles, because you can keep a vehicle running for a very long time. You don't need to be buying a new vehicle every 4 years or 5 years, right?
No, you don't. And it's just, I mean, my wife, she has a very nice vehicle, but it's still, 12 years old at this point. It's a 2012 GMC Yukon, and we're looking at downsizing it because honestly, it's just too big. We don't need it. But you don't have to buy new. I did buy new on my last vehicle because used car prices for the hybrid market are just ridiculous. And I was looking at a 1 or 2 year old hybrid with 50,000 miles on it being basically $2,000 less than the brand new one. And so I said, no, I'm just going to buy the new one. It is what it is. I was able to get a lower interest rate because I bought new anyway, and was very close in the ultimate price because I did have to finance. I didn't have the cash on hand because I was not expecting to buy a new vehicle, but I totaled my Lexus. But nobody cares what you more than you. So once you realize that, it doesn't matter what you're driving. I mean, my wife doesn't care. I mean, we went on anniversary date dinners in my 1985 Dodge. Like nobody really cares about how much money you're trying to present that you have. And honestly, like, especially if you're still in the dating scene, I tell this a lot to my younger students back when I was a teacher. Like, if you've got people that are really caring about what you're driving, they're probably not people you need to be surrounding yourself with, because they're not going to have the same goals that you're going to have.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Those older trucks, even mine's, it's still within this century, 2002, but it's now obviously getting much older, 22 years. But You know, that 1985 Dodge, you're probably turning more heads with that than you are with your new car.
Oh yeah, especially I just got it out of the body shop, so it's looking really nice right now. So anytime I take it out anywhere, I get way more people stopping me to talk about it than I did. I mean, at one point I had like a 2016 Dodge Ram, and it was brand new back when I was still working for car dealerships and stuff. And nobody stopped me at the gas station to talk about that truck. I have a 15-minute conversation every time I stop to put gas in that truck. So I mean, it's cool keeping stuff like that, and it's nostalgic. My grandfather drove those trucks when I was growing up, and so every time I get in that truck, I feel like I'm 7, 8 years old again, going to the store with my grandfather. I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I don't know if you've seen, I've put several pictures of my truck up on Twitter/X, and for a 22-year-old truck, it's in extremely good shape. And yeah, sure, it's starting to get a few rust spots here and there. Obviously, here in Canada, we have salt and sand on the roads through the winter, so
Right.
it's kind of expected to happen. But I'm happy to keep driving it, and yeah, so I've got no problem. I've got no issue with the fact that I'm driving a 22-year-old truck.
Yeah.
Not at
Now I
all.
do have a question. I didn't know this off of the truck, but is your truck a gas burner or a diesel?
It's gas, yeah.
It's a gas burner. Okay. All right. Cool. I've had a couple Fords over the year. My family actually used to own a Ford dealership, so I grew up driving Fords a 40 of my life.
Right. And I'm not like super brand loyal. I've had Chevys. I've had all sorts of different, makes and models of vehicles over my lifetime. And I get that too. Part of
Mm-hmm.
that is, a Dividend Dog and I were talking about this on a recent episode where, a lot of people drive a Ford because their father drove a Ford, and because his father drove a Ford, and because his father drove, like even nowadays, it's like,
Yep.
4, sometimes even 5 generations of people that have been driving that, whether it's Ford or GM or whatever it may be, right?
Yep.
But I would say, kind of the moral of this segment is just drive an old vehicle, keep it in good shape, take care of
Yep.
it, and don't worry about car payments these days. I don't know, they have to be insane.
I mean, mine's higher than almost any other that I've ever had, but it's still well below like the 8% mark. I don't know if you've ever tuned into the Money Guy show, but they've got a rule where it's 23 and 8, where you put down 20%, you only finance for 3 years, and you have to keep it below 8% of your income. And so mine's I met all of those criteria doing that, but because I was financing for 3 years, the payment was still pretty high, but it's still very manageable. But it's, even though I have the income to support that, me having that knee jerk reaction where it felt like a punch in the gut when I saw that payment, but I'm still like, hey, you're following all the steps. Like I'd planned on purchasing my next vehicle cash. My Lexus had plenty more miles left in it, but I told it, and I was just put in a situation to where the only way I could have afforded to buy a new vehicle was to take money out of my 401k, and that's not an option. So I just financed.
All right, Sandstone Davy. My first car was a Ford Pinto. Love it. Love it.
Hopefully he wasn't rear-ended, because if he was, he probably wouldn't be talking to us right now.
Yeah, obviously not. He was not rear-ended, because he's still here commenting. Oh, that's funny. That's great. Thanks for the comment there, Sandstone Davy at Sandstone Capital. Interesting. Yeah, keep the comments coming, guys, and anyone else in the chat. There's Joe DeVito showing up, just screaming my name. Thanks, Joe.
I like Joe. I've started interacting with him a good bit here on X lately. Yeah, he seems a guy. I really enjoyed his episode with Tom the Savings Captains a couple ago.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think I listened to that one. I know that he's been on my Joe's been on my show recently as well. So, and I think I did listen to Tom's. I kind of get lost in which ones I haven't listened to. I'm sure most of us do, right? Oh wow. Okay, moving on from used vehicles. I think we've covered that topic. Buy a very used vehicle and drive it for as long as you can. Keep it in good shape. Okay, let's just talk about, investment portfolio. What's your strategy? How do you go about it? What's your
My go-to answer is I'm a boring investor. I don't do options trading. I don't do anything like that. I really like the S&P 500. I really like small cap value funds, and I really like international index funds. So my portfolio is split up. All of my portfolios are 50, 30, 20. So 50% the S&P 500, whether that's FXAIX, VU, or like the Spartan 500 fund. And then for the small cap, I have a small cap blend in my 401k, and then all of my stuff like my taxable brokerage and the other accounts, I just buy one fund. It's it's an ETF. It's called AVUV, but it's a small cap value, and I really like it. And then for the international index funds, I use a zero fee mutual fund from Fidelity, and that's what I use on my 401k and my taxable brokerage account. And it's a really solid fund that generally just goes up and to the right, and it pays dividends. So I love it.
right? So you're very well diversified, just with a very concentrated portfolio, by the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I like index funds. They're super simple, and it frees up my time. I'm not gonna invest the time to invest in regular just individual stocks like I believe is needed to be in individual stocks. So I focus primarily on my career and then school. I'm still in school as well. So I'm going to invest in, just broad market funds and just let them do the work for me. It's easy. And like I said, my portfolio generally just goes up and to the right every single month. So, I mean, I love it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And then you mentioned an international fund as well, so that gives you a lot of exposure outside of just the U.S. as well.
Yes, it does. And most of the international index funds I am invested in are heavily invested in the Japanese market, but I think right behind them is usually like European and Canada markets. So it's a lot of diversification with three funds basically.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive. And that's kind of what I was getting to off the top of this, the amount of diversification. And again, I think probably a lot of it because you have that international fund, so you're focusing outside of the U.S., where I think a lot of U.S. investors might have a little bit of like investing myopia, like they have the blinders on, where they just see
Mm-hmm.
the. And obviously, there's an endless list of incredible U.S. companies that you can invest in, so it's very easy
Yes.
to not look outside the U.S. Right, but
Right.
I think it's great that you have looked outside the U.S.
Right. I appreciate that. Yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it worked out. Like I said, it's the short amount of time I've been investing, it's worked out really well for me.
Right. That is interesting, though. And so you also mentioned that in one of those funds, there's dividends.
So all of the funds that I invest in do dividends, and of course the mutual funds are also going to give you like capital gains and whatnot. But that's one of the things I generally look for in the funds that I'm going to be investing in. If they pay at least a yearly dividend, most of them were quarterly.
Yeah. So that's always that nice little bonus too. Like as most people know, I'm a heavy dividend investor. I really like to see that cash, like
Mm-hmm.
show me the money sort of idea, right? Just every
Yep.
quarter that cash just appears in your brokerage account. And so, I can
Yep.
definitely see obviously, again, coming from my perspective of being a heavy dividend investor is like, why wouldn't I want dividends, right?
Right. Yeah. And especially if you drip, I mean, it just goes right back into it. I don't ever even see my dividends. It's just constantly compounding. And
Yeah.
it's, if you leave it alone, it's really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that compounding. And like you say, if you're not even looking at it, you're not thinking about it. It's just over time, just getting bigger and bigger and letting the drip and
Mhm.
the compound work its magic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I even do that with my savings account. My savings account is a money market through Fidelity. It's their SPAX account, and so I've got my SPAX account. It compounds every month, and so every month I've got it to where it automatically reinvests into FXAIX, which is my S&P 500 mutual fund, and so I don't even see the compound interest for my savings account. I prefer doing it that way.
Yeah. kind of a set it and forget it type of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I'm sorry. The child in the background is distracting me a little bit. I forget what I was about to say next.
Sorry, she's a
It's okay.
constant
It's okay.
distraction.
I remember what I was gonna mention, which I want to ask you. In everything that you've talked about so far, you have not said the four magic letters that so many people in the U.S. and even Canada say when it comes to indexing
REITs.
funds and ETF. And you know what those four letters are, right? SCHD.
Oh, SCHD. I thought you were going with the REITs. So SCHD. So the reason I don't do SCHD is every time I bring up my small cap value fund, AVUV, SCHD gets brought up as well. SCHD it's a good one, but everybody wants it for its dividend growth, or everybody wants it for its dividend payout. And just looking at it, like I see where it's a really good fund, but I don't buy my funds specifically for what they're going to do with dividends. I want to see good value in the funds, and I want to see that what they're investing in is going to bring me really good returns. The dividends are just an added bonus. I don't chase dividends only, and I know a lot of people get wrapped up in SCHD for that. I think it's a good fund, but I think AVUV historically outperforms it, and that's why I go in that direction.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. From what I know about SEHD, and that's primarily just from talking to people here on the Passive Income Podcast, and obviously what I see on Twitter/X, basically exactly what you just said. It appears very like an extremely good fund, and when you do dig deeper into it, you do see that it has within its basket, going back to some of those incredible American companies that I mentioned, right? Like your Coca-Colas and I think Home Depot's in there, McDonald's, probably Starbucks, probably Apple, so um, I can definitely see though if you have another one that's very similar to it, like why double down if you're kind of already
Right.
have something going on. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Welcome investment Kage. I said it right this time, did I?
You're fine. Yeah, you did.
Close enough.
Yeah, no, it was right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for popping in.
No problem. How's it going?
I'm good. Charter, feel free to keep in the conversation here with investment Kage.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm eating food too, so I'll kind of pipe in. But yeah, I make quesadilla stuff. So
Cool. How is your Sunday going?
it's pretty good. I didn't work today, so it's been nice. I've had a weekend off. My first weekend in, I don't know. Well, my first weekend not being sick in probably a year or two. So that's cool.
Oh, Charter has lost sound, unfortunately. I did see the other day, though, you were the only American on Thursday that tweeted out, "I'm working."
Oh,
Because, of course, for me, on Thursday was just Thursday. And so many Americans on Thursday were obviously enjoying Thanksgiving dinner and watching football. And you were like, "Yeah, I'm working."
yeah, that's what happens when your parents own a business. Like, business doesn't stop.
Unfortunate. Oh, that's too bad. What's going on with Charters?
Oh, Charter. That's happened to me before too. Just log off and then come back in. I'll just DM him.
Cool. So, we're trying to get Charter's sound back on. Let's talk about what's been happening with your investment journey since the last time you were on the Passive Income Podcast.
Sweet.
Oh, there we go. We got you back.
Yeah, I guess I had to unplug my microphone. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, I just DM'd you. That's funny.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
That happened on the last live stream.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I just unplugged the microphone and plugged it back in. Everything came back, so I don't know. I guess Apple's weird like that.
It was weird that you lost sound right when I logged Kage on to the into the live stream. I logged him in, and you lost sound right at the exact same time. That was really weird. But
Yeah, I don't know.
My investment stuff. I started not trading a ton, but trading quite a bit more. It's a really weird process. I look for companies that are trading under book value. I make sure they're profitable, and then I kind of ride them because I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, I'm going to be a bag holder of a profitable company.
right,
So,
that's a
and it's working pretty well. I've done it with Ally Bank quite a few times. They're
seems like a
just
decent
bank stocks
strategy,
right now are
right?
a little more predictable for me. So, just because I've researched them a ton, but I can't do big bank stocks. I just don't understand their earnings reports well enough. They're too complicated in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, I've heard kind of similar things about the Canadian banks. If you try to like read through one of their like quarterly reports, you're just if you're not like a professional financial person, you're just going to get drowned in a sea of words and information.
Yeah, I mean, my thought process: if an annual report is more than 200 pages, I probably shouldn't own the company. It's probably too complicated.
Right. Fair enough.
I have exceptions, like I have a REIT, but it's only if I can easily find all their LLCs because I go through like a company's LLC to make sure they're not committing fraud. A lot of REITs I've noticed in America commit fraud, so like they'll have a property that's not doing well, and so they'll just make an LLC and then put that property in there, and then it'll just go bankrupt. And be like, oh
Right.
look, no, we didn't lose money.
Right. So it's kind of cooking the books, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's not really fraud, but it's as close as you can get. I mean,
Right.
I think it kind of is because you're not telling the shareholders that in your 10K or whatever. You're just only like, oh look, if you read this specific paper, it's right here. That's why I like Vici, because in their 10K they put all their LLCs in the same page. They're like, nope, we have nothing to hide. Here you go.
Right.
Also, just to spin off that, if
Charter, back to
the
you.
earning, no, I was going to say, just to spin off that, if Kage is having trouble deciphering someone's earning reports, he reads 10Ks for fun. So it's definitely going to be difficult for everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read hundreds now.
Your idea of fun and my idea of fun are two very different things.
I just think learning fun. As someone who struggled with learning most of his life, so I find like that aspect kind of enticing. Like, oh look, I can actually do this. I couldn't have done this when I was younger. So I think that's why it's fun for me. Like I get frustrated with it, but it's fun getting the end goal. It's like lifting. I really don't like lifting, but I really like the results lifting gives me, and so to me that's fun.
Right.
If
When you
that
say
makes
you mean
sense.
like lifting weights and working out.
Yeah, like
Oh,
lifting weights and stuff. Like
yeah.
I like flipping and stuff, but I don't like learning the new flips and the new techniques. But I really like the end process, and that's I think the process of doing the whole thing is what I really like and enjoy, not the necessarily doing the act. Because doing the act, like I've done a million backflips. That's a little exaggerated. To me, it's not very fun anymore. But learning a new skill is a lot more fun. So, and that's how I view reading 10Ks.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Before you logged on, before I logged you on, Charter and I were having quite the conversation. I don't know if you caught the off the top. We were talking about used vehicles, and then we got into his what he called boring investment strategy, which I think is obviously very good. And then we got talking about what were we talking about last there? SCHD, I think, and why you didn't
I
hold
was
it.
talking about how I prefer AVUV over SCHD, and how I don't invest in things just because they pay a dividend. I look at the company's growth potential and the company's value and everything else.
Right. And then uh, when I was talking about four letters and I brought up SCHD, and we've already touched on this a little bit, so I'm going to throw it back to you about the REITs and maybe get a little bit more of your perspective on that topic. Charter, I'm talking about.
So I'm not. Basically, I haven't done much research on REITs. I don't know very much about them, so I'm not investing in them. I am currently working on starting my first rental property. And so, I'm actually investing in legitimate rentals. I'm putting REITs on the back burner. I know there's a potential for me to miss out on some potential earnings opportunity, but I've got enough on my plate for me not to justify looking into REITs right now, because I'm already, as we've already talked about, I'm pretty well diversified through the three main funds that I use. And I just don't see a huge plus to me in investing in REITs as well, when I know I'm trying to do rentals on top of that.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I don't see why you would want to get into REITs either if you're going down the physical real estate route,
Right.
which it sounds like is your one of your next moves, your game plan.
It is.
So yeah, let's keep talking about, I guess, sort of that game plan of where we're going with the physical real estate. Where do you see yourself in 6 months, a year, perhaps longer time frame?
So in 6 months, what we're going to be fortunate enough, I was able to lock down a new own financing.
I think you're cutting out, Charter.
Are you having trouble hearing him as well?
Yep.
Hey, Dave, can you hear
Yes,
me?
you are having trouble, or you can hear him? Okay, his audio's cutting out on me.
His audio's cutting out and his video's cutting out.
Okay, well, we'll go to let's go to
I can
Sandstone's
answer
question.
Sandstone Capital's question. So Sandstone Capital asks, question for both investment Kage and blue collar investor. What source do you guys use for investment advice / research? Example, Yahoo Finance, etc. Thanks. So research that I do is I just read their annual reports. I don't really go out of my way to look at what people are doing. I mean, I like to like look at people like Joseph Carlson, who are very well educated, Peter Lynch, Warren Buffett. Like, I'll look at what they're buying, and then I'll do more research by looking into that. Like, I don't go out of my way to go on YouTube and look up top 10 REITs or whatever. Like, I don't do my research like that. I might have an idea. Like, they might say ticker symbol and they might give some data, but I'm not doing that. I have used Seeking Alpha and Morningstar. Seeking Alpha more for just to see what other people think and maybe if it's not good for me. And then I've also used Morningstar. I like Morningstar a lot because they're really credible, and I have the Robinhood Gold thing. And it just tells me, like, if I'll read their whole report thing and their like synopsis and their thesis. I'm like, okay, is this worth me researching more? Because I'm going to be reading their last 10 years of annual reports before I even touch the stock. So I hope that answers your question, but I don't really look for investment advice. And I try not to give investment advice either. And I naturally have a pretty cocky personality. That's why most of my portfolio is ETFs, because I know if I do my trading strategy, like, eventually I'll probably blow something up.
Charter, you got quite the little animals running around behind you there.
Dude, I wasn't kidding when I told you, like, this third child has just been something else. It's rough.
I'm going to throw Sandstone Capital's question over to you. What source do you use for investment advice research? Example, Yahoo Finance, etc.
So research, my brokerage account is through Fidelity. Fidelity has a pretty useful research tool. So that's always going to set the funds and the ETFs that I'm looking at. I do utilize Yahoo Finance a lot. Another big one is, of course, like podcasts. Usually I hear about my funds initially off of a podcast or something like that. I first heard of AVUV from Paul Merriman. It's something that he highly recommends for small cap value funds. And then, of course, X as well. I've talked to, I just listen to what people like Kage have to say. Joseph Hadaway and I talk daily through DMs about certain things. And then I also, as I talked about earlier, my company pays for me to have a financial advisor. And so that basically every quarter I get to see him. And so I'll sit down with him and I will bring just a notebook full of notes. And I'm like, hey, so you're about to answer 5 million questions. I'm sorry. And that's what I use him for.
No, use that resource. That's great.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal resource. It's one of my favorites. I wish I had access to him more often, but I like having that face-to-face conversation with him. And every time I sit down and talk with him, he's like, no, dude, I like that. And basically, he just reaffirms that my research is doing what it's supposed to do and I'm making good choices. But that reaffirmation from somebody that does this professionally, it makes you feel really good. And it makes me, more confident in my decisions going forward.
Yeah, so I did something similar when I started investing. I made a TikTok video about this, but I didn't go very in depth. Basically, when I first started investing, my school had a program that was teaching people to become financial advisors. And they were like, where you'd ask them a bunch of questions, and then there was an actual reputable financial advisor in the room that went through the program and managed a certain amount of, I don't remember what the assets under management were that they did, but it was a lot. It was more than 10 million. And so they were both in the same room, and I'd ask the questions that I had about investing. It was stupid cheap, about $25. And I'd be like, okay, what is this and this and this? And then the person would answer it, and the financial advisor would be like, that's correct, but also this too. That was pretty much the whole thing. So I think it's really useful, especially when you're first starting and don't know anything. I mean, I read for 3 years before I even bought the stock. I read Wall Street Journal and all those things, but before I even touched stocks, I didn't know. And I knew Warren Buffett said buy Boo or S&P 500. Yeah. I was like, I still don't even understand that. What is S&P 500? I'm like, sure, I know there are 500 companies, but what do those 500 companies do?
Right.
So, I think for most people, yeah, financial advisor isn't stealing your money. A lot of them are pretty good and can help you a ton.
Especially if you're in a situation where I am, my financial advisor doesn't actually charge me until I get into retirement. For the entirety of me using him while I still work for my company pays for it 100%. So it's a completely free asset for me. So if you're not utilizing, things like that, you're throwing money down the drain, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I bought Robinhood Gold just for the Morningstar research because it's $5. I didn't care about the high yield savings account. Now I just put that in there because it works that way. But
hey, so Robinhood Gold, though, they just rolled out their IRA match. I don't know if you've done 3%. Any research. I don't know if you've done any research into that, but I heard about that. That seems like a pretty solid reason to start edging back towards Robinhood if you don't have access to a 401k or something like that. Yeah,
so I maxed mine out in January this year.
Okay.
And so they only did 1% back then. And then 3 months later, they did 3%. And people are like, oh, are you mad about it? And I'm like, no.
No.
It paid for it's a 1% match, and I put $6,500 in, so I paid for my gold. So I still don't care.
Yeah.
Sure, I could have gotten more, but I'm fighting over $120. I'm not going to fight over that.
Yeah, dude, hindsight's 2020, and you cannot beat yourself up over that. I mean, looking back, you always have a better view of things.
Mm-hmm. Some people are like, "Oh, you should."
Plus, you have that long. You have that time horizon on your side, right? You're 25, 26 years old. So
yeah, 25. So yeah, that 120 could compound into a lot, but it's not. Yeah, it's just not worth me arguing. I did one time because I have a really old Robinhood account, and this was before they changed their username and Gmail thing. So my username was different than my email. Just how I set it up. I was 21. I didn't really know what I was doing. I set it up on my phone, but you should never set things up on your phone. Make sure you go on a computer. It's just easier and safer. But yeah, so I had this huge problem with Robinhood because it was oh, your account will be locked in 30 days if you don't get this changed. And I tried to, so I called support. I was I can't change my account. And I was if you don't get this fixed right away, I'm just going to switch to a different brokerage. and they immediately fixed it because I had like 90,000 with them at the time, or 80,000 with them at the time, and
Yep.
their average is like 4,000. So they're like,
Yep.
"Oh shoot, you're a big person." So there is something to say about having like, if you have a decent amount of money in a brokerage, they will treat you very well.
Definitely. I'm just going to circle back quickly. You're talking about both financial advisors and podcasts. So I just want to give a shout out to Tom, a savings captain, and Money Happy Hour podcast. He is another absolutely phenomenal resource. Someone who has spent an entire career, now retired, but spent an entire career in the financial services industry. And so obviously he is extremely knowledgeable and on the subjects. And as you mentioned, learning from podcasts, that's definitely one that I really enjoy listening to as well. So just shout out to Tom on that one.
Shameless shout out on that. I hear he might have a really interesting guest speaker for tomorrow's episode.
Yeah, is it you?
It's me.
Awesome. Yeah, so definitely check that one out. Tomorrow's episode of the Money Happy Hour podcast.
I really like following people's journeys, and so like my favorite one to listen to would be like Russ. What's his? I don't remember his name on Spotify, but his Twitter name is Russ. Rusty Ram. Oh, that's it. Oh shoot, I need to look it up. But also One Penny at a Time. I really like looking at people's stories and stuff and seeing their growth. And so, like, there's a couple people I follow that have like 2,000 invested, and they like DM me like, "Why are you following me?" I'm like, "Because I like watching people's journeys. I was there at 1.2. I think that's fun to watch." And so, One Penny at a Time, he posts a video every Monday, not a video, a podcast, and then every month he goes over his portfolio. It's completely transparent, and it's just fun to watch and see. I'm gonna look for Rusty.
Yeah, Harris and I have connected a couple times. He's been on the Passive Income podcast. I've been on his channel. And same with Rusty Ram. He's been on the Passive Income podcast. I think twice as a one-on-one guest, and at least once in a live stream like this as well. So, yeah, like you said, great people to connect with and follow, and like you mentioned, just sort of watch and learn from their journeys as well, right?
Yeah, because there's sometimes a lot of people will find things that you just never thought of looking at, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't think of it that way. That's interesting." Like,
Yeah.
so like I started buying BTI a long time ago, and then I actually sat down and looked at the total returns of like VU versus BTI. I was like, "Oh, VU's actually probably better because BTI has a bunch of not great companies in it." And like the S&P 500, it's just the criteria that it's just a higher level of standard. So like,
That's the same thing I figured out with FC Rocks versus FXAIX. With FXAIX, I actually pay a little bit of a fee, but its returns are way higher than FC Rocks. So that's why I put most of my money into that fund.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay. I mean, like, I have quite a bit of SCHD, but my thought process isn't really the growth on that. Like, I originally when I first started buying stocks, I bought this like monthly paying dividend ETF because it gave me the dopamine hit of seeing money in my account, and that motivated me to invest more money. So yes, I knew very well going into it my returns might not be as well in that fund, but seeing that income was like, hey, this is actually a real legitimate thing. And I know like I'm a math person too, but like I'm also like pretty pro emotion.
That's the psychology of it, right? The psychology of just seeing that. I said it earlier, the show me the money, like seeing that cash show up in your brokerage account. And
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I definitely get, like you said, a dopamine hit. It is, right?
Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh wow, this is actually legit. Like this is great. And my truck had died, so that's awesome. Cool. But yeah, no, like so I think it was I bought it during COVID, this monthly dividend paying thing. It was like SPHD or something. And so I still made money on it, but I looked more into researching it. I mean, during COVID, if you bought anything, you did fine, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, for the most part, if you buy anything, you did great. So I'm not saying like I was a genius for it or whatever, because I definitely wasn't. And then I was looking at the returns to like other funds, like, hey, this fund kind of sucks. Like this dopamine hit stupid. But getting that dopamine hit made me really want to put more money in.
Yeah, I would say we all looked brilliant in 2020 and 2021 because it was just like up into the green, just it kept going, right? Just kept going up and up and up, and then somewhere around mid 2022 and into most of 2023, it's been a little bit more of a struggle and having to actually think and, like you said, learn and figure out what we're actually doing, right?
Yeah, 2020 was easy. All you had to do was like, if I had a Robinhood account at the time, and I remember like just going off of what Robinhood recommended, and I remember making money off of just Robinhood's recommendations. Like that's not the case most of the time.
Yeah, like the only reason I'm beating the market or whatever is because the majority of my holdings are like the top S&P 500 holdings. Like I have Apple as my biggest holding individual. I have Microsoft. Then I have Costco. Then I have Visa. And then I have ExxonMobil. And I bought ExxonMobil during COVID, so shocker that the company is doing well.
But you've also said that like 90% of your holdings are ETFs, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like 80%. If you include my
80%.
cash holdings, yeah, it's like 75, 80%. Like I mean, like I only have like $3,000. I know this is a lot of money, so I'm not saying that it's not a lot of money. Like I have about $3,000 in Apple and about $3,000 in Microsoft. So I don't remember how much, 2,500, 3,000 in Costco, 2,000 or something like that's in Visa. ExxonMobil's around 1,500 or 1,800. I'd have to look. I can't get my track pad to work, so I can't look.
But still significant, like all of those amounts,
like it's a lot of money.
They add up to a significant amount, right?
Yeah, they add up, but it's not like I was a genius picker or anything. Like I bought ExxonMobil before I knew about 10Ks. I wasn't a genius.
Right.
I just like, oh look, the company's trading over book value and the world needs oil. This is stupid. That was my investment thesis. And then I read the ExxonMobil's 10K, and I was like, oh, cool, they're doing other things besides oil. Because I was like, I guess I kind of got lucky in that aspect. Because they're doing lithium, and they also do, like, renewable energies a little bit. So it's like, okay, they're not... The Rockefellers and who's running the company aren't stupid people. So...
Yeah.
One stock I didn't hear you mention, though, that's going to, like, make half of X upset, though, is I didn't hear Tesla.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't own Tesla. So my problem with Tesla is I don't have a problem with it per se. I just think it's grossly overvalued, and I don't like investing in a company where if the CEO said something, like, he just has too much power, if that makes sense. Like, if Elon Musk says something negative about Tesla,
like they're going private?
Or really anything. Like, one time Elon, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something kind of questionable, like he always does. But like, it's the internet, you can do whatever he wants. But like, when you are a powerful person and you have a lot of money, it's like you should think about what you say. You don't have to limit what you say, but you should think about how you say it before you just say it to 100 million people in the world. And so
I agree.
I can't invest in a company that's like, I think Tesla will do great long term. Like, just because I don't own a stock, like I sold out of Kroger recently. I don't hate Kroger. I just think Costco is a better company. I think Tesla is grossly overvalued because it is. It's not that I think it is. It's just if you do fair value estimates, it's overvalued. People are thinking of the future. But if you buy Tesla, like you just have to be okay with your portfolio may drop 30% in a day.
Yeah, that's true.
I think most people can't handle that. And since like I've started to get a pretty decent sized following, I actually started, because of my following, I started being a little more conservative with my investments because I know people will blindly follow me, and I don't want people to blindly follow me. Like, if you blindly follow me and I buy 75% ETFs, okay, you will probably do fine. Like, you're probably not going to go big. Unless, like, the S&P 500 goes to zero, then we have bigger problems anyway.
Way bigger problems.
So, yeah. But yeah, Tesla...
I think that's a great point, though, about people just blindly following. Is like, do your own research, right? Do your own due diligence. you may not have to dive as deep in as Kage does and read the every single report that comes out, but
No, you don't.
you
Definitely not.
make sure that you're doing enough of your own research and due diligence that you're making wise decisions and not just blindly following somebody because they said they bought something on
Yeah,
Twitter or X, whatever, right? And I
I mean,
totally
like,
agree 110% with what you said about Tesla and Elon Musk. When one person can just write a post and all of a sudden the stock takes a dive just because of something he might happen to say on any given day. That's I don't know. I really don't want to use the word red flag because we're all going to get hate on here in the comments
oh yeah,
about
of
hating
course.
Tesla. But we, I don't hate Tesla. I don't hate the cars. I think they're great technology, and I think the company is probably going to do very well over time. But it's a bit of a scary investment when one person can just, like you said, say something to literally 100 million people and affect the share price, right?
Yeah, I mean that could be said about like every investment though, because people will argue that. I was like, well, you can go on CNBC or CNN or whatever, and they can say the same thing. I'm like, well, yes, but the thing is that's not usually as accessible to me. And like I agree with that argument. It's like, yeah, that's why a lot of CEOs and stuff, they usually deter the argument when they ask about share price and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tesla volatility actually is why I don't own Tesla, especially since they're in the money calls. That I was looking at Samsung Capital. He's like, I hate the volatility of Tesla. Like, I'm not gonna buy Tesla, for example. I mean, maybe if you're doing it as a speculative bet, sure, fine, whatever. A lot of people do, and that's okay. Uh, but they don't actually own shares of Tesla. They're all in treasury bonds, and they're just doing calls out for when they think it's going to hit a strike price. And since Tesla is so volatile, it's really hard to do covered calls and stuff like that with them or any kind of options because you're just on the whims of Elon at that point. Now, a company that's a little more predictable, like ExxonMobil, yeah, sure, you can do covered calls and stuff like that. I don't recommend doing calls or options or anything, but I think there's less risky ways to do it. And having somebody giving them a fund to go do it for you, I think is kind of like, okay, you just admitted that you don't know what you're doing, and now you just put all the risk on somebody else. And then if it loses money, you're gonna be like, oh, it's all their fault, when really it was your fault, and because you don't understand what the fund is. Because every Tesla holder that I've talked to, like, I have a huge document and like a bunch of stuff I'll send them, and they're like, oh, I didn't know any of this. I'm like, then why are you investing in the fund? I don't get it. Like, if you don't know how the fund works, you shouldn't invest in it. S&P 500, like, really simple. It's like, okay, it's just comprised, it's market cap weighted, it's 500 top companies. That's easy for most people to understand.
Yeah.
I pulled up my... Yeah, so, like, for example, like, talking about my portfolio, like, in VU alone, to include my raw, I have like 33,000 in it. I mean VTI. VU is 20,000. SHD is 10,000. So that's 53,000 right there. So like half my portfolio is just 3 index funds.
I see we just lost Charter again.
I see that.
Possibly he'll come back on. I'm not sure. I see we're
I know.
getting close
And then
to an hour.
18K is cash. So most of my portfolio is really conservative anyways.
I do want to add to that, though, what you were saying. What we were talking about the Elon and the the tweeting, and I'm not sure if it was you or Charter that mentioned you could also be watching CNBC and sort of getting that same possibly poorer advice or something. And it really seems I'm going to bring his name up, Jim Cramer. It really seems that people have learned to do the opposite. Just do the opposite of what Jim Cramer says, right?
Yeah, Kramer is really interesting. So, like, the inverse Kramer isn't actually very good. If you look at what it does, it tries to inverse his portfolio, and his portfolio actually does pretty well. Like, it's not
Right.
bad. So with Jim Cramer as an example, you have to watch what he does, but don't listen to what he says. Is what I like to think of it as. Because if you look at his charitable portfolio, his like 13F,
Jesus. Sorry about that.
no worries. It does pretty well. It's not bad. Like when he
Whistler,
tweets
stop.
random things,
Come here.
sometimes it's like okay. So like I've made like jokes about Jim Cramer. I'm like, he said something bad about this stock because I think it's funny. But I'm not hating on him or anything. It's just what it is.
Right. Welcome back, Charter. We lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We were just talking about, because we were talking about Elon there previously, and his power to just tweet something out and affect the market. We were also then I brought up Jim Cramer, because one of you had mentioned CNBC as well. So Kage made a great point of, watch what he does, not what he says. To paraphrase, any thoughts on either Jim Cramer or the inverse Cramer ETF?
So honestly, I just don't put much precedence in anything I see in social media or mainstream media when it comes to investing. I DCA the same 3 or 4 things every single week, and that's pretty much it. And I'm going to continue doing that until my research shows that I should do otherwise. And with most of my holdings being within the S&P 500, the research says that I'm probably never going to say to not invest in that. So I really, man, a lot of that stuff you see is clickbait, and I know a lot of them are just trying to say whatever is going to get the most attention, and I just try my best to, ignore the noise. I just don't.
Thinking those exact same 3 words, ignore the noise. It's very, literally, I was thinking the exact same 3 words right as you were saying them.
Yeah, it's just, it's never really done me any good, investing based off of what I'm seeing within, the media specifically and social media. I do occasionally get some really good things out of X and whatnot, but I'm pretty much just going to ignore it. There obviously it's going to maybe change the way I research a certain bit, but I'm going to go through, weeks to possibly months of research before I change my investment strategy, usually because I have a long-term goal. I have a very long-term goal, and, it's just boring investing. So I know it's not going to change very often.
I think that's a great segue. You just said you have a long-term goal. So great segue into the question here. Do either of you have a specific age or amount of money you want to achieve in your portfolio to retire?
Yeah. So I have that answer. So for me, my retirement age that I am shooting for is 51. And the reason that is because in 17 years, my daughter will be turning 18, and I am hopefully sending her off to college somewhere. And so I really want to enjoy my 50s with my wife being child free. And so I want to be, completely done working. If I have to work, it'll be fully remote. Luckily, with the career field that I'm in, most of the time I can find a job, doing work from home as long as I've got a good internet connection. As far as the money goes, I want, between my wife and I think my magic number is right at the 5 million mark. Just for us to live very comfortably. I'm hoping to live a very long life. So I'm kind of overshooting for everything because I don't want to end up being 80 years old and broke.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Looking forward to that empty nest already. You've got a long way to go.
I do. We decided to start over.
I'm going to add to that too, because you mentioned earlier about having beginning a physical real estate portfolio. So do you think maybe in your 50s, you could just be, using a little bit of that as passive income? Sure, physical real estate, you do still have to do some work. You have to go and do some repairs now and then, but you're not working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, right?
Correct. That is certainly on the table. I've also toyed the idea of accumulating some stuff up until that age. And then once I get there, if I just decide it's too much stress, just selling off whatever properties I have, if that's what looks better at that time. Right. I don't plan on, getting to the point where I have 20 or 30 doors, like, say, the Frugal Gay, Tom, the Frugal Gay he has. I don't know that I'm ever going to grow my rental portfolio the way that he has. But, I think having 5 to 10 doors ultimately would be a pretty decent goal for my wife and I. And, she's also picked a career field where she can travel a lot because she is about to graduate to be a nurse, and travel nurses make a lot of money. And so we've toyed around with just her picking a contract in whatever area that she wants to work in for 6 to 12 weeks, going and letting her work that contract, and me working from the RV or whatever we're living in at the time. And tentatively, that's our plan right now. It's pretty fluid though. We know that it's probably going to change over the next couple of years.
Sure, Kage. Let's throw that same question over to you.
So my age. So like, I really like working. Like I do, but that might change. So like my financial independence goal is about the same as Charter. It's 50. The reason I chose that is because my father has a friend who's 50. He was an electrical engineer and all that stuff, but he was like 53 or something like that, and when he retired, and he really likes his life. But I also really like listening to what he has to say, because some very traumatic things happened to his family, like his daughter committed suicide and other things, and so it made him like step back and realize, hey, work isn't everything. And so like I want that financial independence number by 50, because then it's like, okay, then I don't have to work, and then I can spend time on things I want to spend on. And I don't really have a number. Like, I'll be honest with you. So like when I first started investing when I was 21, I was like, I want to have $30,000 invested by the time I'm 30. I had that goal because like if I invest
By the time you're 30, you were going to take 9 years to get to 30 grand.
Oh yeah, because I was only investing 150 a month. I didn't imagine myself investing any more. Like that was like my goal. I had it written down somewhere, and I was like, yeah, by 30 I want this number. And I was like, yeah, 30,000 I can do because that's 150 a month. But obviously that changed when I realized that you don't need to save. Like, cause I thought you had to save 33% of your income and then invest, because that's what I used to do. Because like I couldn't differentiate between the two, and then I realized once you have a certain amount in savings, you can invest a lot of money. I didn't get that because I was told when I was 8 from a banker, like, you need to save 33% of your income no matter what. And I listened to him. That's what I did, and that did me well. But it was really hard to change that mindset. But yeah, so the goal, so like I would like a paid off house, and so my living expenses would probably be around 50,000 a year, 60,000 a year. I can't tell with inflation, so like that number is really hard for me to guess. So, but yeah, but I do have.
That's a great point. We don't know. It's a great point, because obviously we've really seen it here in the last 2-3 years how inflation is just really bitten us in the ass, so to speak. And in another 25 years, we know things are just going to keep getting more and more expensive. And we know that wages do not keep up with inflation, so it's going to be even harder and harder in the future, right?
Yeah, that's why I invest so much of my money, because like I started spending more. Like you can see, like my books. Like when I was in the podcast with you, I was like, no, I don't spend any money on that. Like a year ago or whatever. But now I'm like, okay, I need to live my life, yo. Like, it's just what I think.
Yeah, that's another point too. It's like you're in your mid-20s, you still have to live a bit of a life and have some fun, right? Like, don't try to save every single penny and be Ebenezer Scrooge or Scrooge McDuck or whatever, right? Like,
No, I realized that I was like that when I asked my parents, and I was like, hey, am I investing too much money? And then, like, I went to bed that night, and I was like, oh my god, if I'm asking that question, especially since I was investing over 50% of my income, I'm investing too much money. Because, like, the fact that I just asked it, man, I feel constricted somehow. Like, I didn't feel that way, but, like, deep down I felt that way, and I really thought about it. I was like, oh my god, yes, go spend 10% of your income on whatever you want. And so that's what I do now, and it's all just books, so...
Probably books on investing.
Oh,
it's all manga.
You can find so many investing books for free. Yeah, pretty much. It's all light novels. Like, yeah, no, it's all. They're like actual books. Like, they're not all manga. I know I'm a weeb. I mean, you can tell about, like, you can see, like, my little Shaoran chibi from Tsubasa and, like, my Naruto background. Like, I'm not wearing it right now. I usually wear a Naruto necklace. But it's right there. I showered before I got on, so that's why I was late.
But like going back to what he was talking about, like living in your 20s, I think that's really important because you're only going to get that decade once. And so obviously I want people investing and spending their money wisely, but I think it's really important. And I made a TikTok about this the other day, but I think it's really important for you to also enjoy your 20s responsibly. Because that was one of the best. I mean, that was one of my best decades. I'm really enjoying my 30s as well. But I mean, I really lived life in my 20s and
Yeah.
it's made my enjoyment in things different in my 30s because I got all of that out of my system back then.
No, that makes
Yeah, I
sense.
would
Like I
agree.
went to. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I agree about the 20s. Like, I probably lived a little too good of a life through my 20s, but
Yep.
you definitely want to enjoy your 20s, right?
Yeah. So my big thing too is like I went to this like real estate meet and greet like FinPut thing in Colorado, and there was a bunch of people there. I was really hesitant to do it because I had to take off work to do it. Um, like I had to leave work early, and I really like working. And so, but like it was really like hard for me to be like, okay, I just need to do this thing. So it's something I want to do. Like life isn't all about work, and it's kind of weird that it happened to me like 3 months ago. And that's when, like a month later, I realized I was spending too much. I was investing too much money. So, but like I'm really glad I did that, and I plan on attending more conferences and stuff like that. Because like I don't need to work to invest every single penny. Because that networking thing actually benefited me really well. Because it actually was like I was kind of getting a little burned out on Twitter, um, but not really burned out. Like just kind of like, okay, I'm posting the same stuff all the time. But then going to that was like, oh my gosh, yes, you need to go do those things, and you need to spend money on things you enjoy. Like life isn't all about working until you die.
Yeah.
I think that's another great saying is, when people are lying in the hospital or in a nursing home on their deathbed, not one single person has ever said, I wish I worked more, right?
No.
Everybody says, I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wish I took my family on more vacations. I wish I had more. Like, nobody has ever said, I wish I worked more. Nobody's ever said that, and nobody ever will, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't regret working super hard. I'm very glad I did because it gave me, because like 2021 and 2022, I worked 16 hours a day, pretty much every day. It was just, and then I worked out and did Twitter, and it was exhausting. But I'm not regretful for doing any of that because it made me realize what my priorities are. So like I worked extremely hard, and then I realized what I actually want. So sometimes you have to. A lot of people will just spend and not do anything, and then they'll die and they won't have anything. But like they didn't have as good of life as they could have. So it's like all about a little bit of balance, I think. So, but yes, I do agree.
Balance is key. Balance is definitely key. We were talking about that, off the top. About how Charter works with the guys that are making really good money, but then at the same time just spending it all on, you know, $90,000 trucks or $100,000 boats or houses bigger than they need. And yeah, it's definitely finding that balance. Like, sure, it's okay to drive a nice truck, but do you need to spend 90 grand on one? If you not find one for 60 or a used one for 40, right? Like,
Yeah, like
wow,
over the
guys, I
summer.
see we've been going here for well over an hour. Yeah, keep going if you want, Kage. I'm good to
Okay.
go. I'm good to keep talking.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that because like we were talking about since during the summer I got a job doing landscaping stuff because my coaching job wasn't doing very great. I had some gout issues and like health issues, so they made it so like I was like, okay, we can just make you like a sub person. I was like, I need a little more consistency than that. So one of my friends, but like I was making really good money doing landscaping, more than I am now. But I saw a lot of my peers just spend frivolously on things that just like they would go out to eat lunch every day. In Colorado, going out to eat to lunch is expensive. Like I'm in one of the most expensive states, and so it's like $20-$30 a lunch. And you can get lunch cheaper, but like that's what they were spending. And I was like, and I'm like packing my lunch all the time and doing these things. They're driving cars that are like $50,000-$60,000 that they can't really afford. Their rent's like $3,000 because they're living in, but they're working like 12 hours. And I'm like, I worked 8 days, guys. This is hard work.
Yeah.
So yes, like to Charter's point, I've seen that a lot, and I don't think I could do construction all year round. It's my shoulder blade was starting to hurt a little. I'm a smaller dude. I'm 150, 145 pounds, 155 pounds, something like that. I'm I'm not big enough to
You're not
move
built for
around
that.
200
Dude, I
pounds.
don't look. I don't think anybody's built for it because I'm 6'2", 250 pounds, and I'm in pretty decent shape. And I can tell you right now that I'm not doing that for 12 hours a day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
right?
it's just a lot of the people could like do it because they were bigger than me. I'm like, dude, I'm too small for that. Because like some of the bosses like, oh, why aren't you lifting as much? I'm like, dude, I'm half your size. Like I'm
Yeah.
working as hard as I can. Like it's just, and like I got paid less because I wasn't doing as much work, which was totally fair. Like that's how it works. Like I wasn't doing as much as the other guys, so obviously I'm gonna get paid less. And I didn't know as much as them too, so that was
Right.
just kind of both things. But it's like, and they're like, oh, you make less than us. I'm like, yeah, because I'm doing like half the work as you guys do. Or 3/4 of the work or whatever. And then like I would try to keep up with them, and that was a bad mistake. Like don't keep up with them. Like just the boss will know that you're working hard, but you don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, same. I've been there too in many of my past lives, working the construction, working landscaping, and working landscape construction. And I'm kind of right in between your two sizes, very average. Well, I'm a little taller than average, 6 feet tall, but say 165, 170 pounds. So very normal build. But same thing, right? Like you can't be doing that for 12 hours a day for your entire life. It's hard enough to do it for 10 or 15 years, which I did, actually maybe closer to 20 years. And yeah, working 8 hours and some, obviously there are days where you have to work 10 or 12, but just even doing it for 8 hours a day, man, it's hard work. And yeah, sure, you can get paid good money doing it. Again, going back to what we were talking about, getting paid, decent money in the trade. So, there is money to be made there, but there's also a lot of guys in the trade who can, you know, work smarter as opposed to working harder, right?
Yeah, no, like I work at like I'm a long-term sub, and I work at a liquor store. And sure, I don't make quite as much money as I did during the summer, but I'm not tired when I get home. I can do my Twitter stuff. Like it's just so much or whatever I want to do. So it's like pros and cons. Like sure, I made more money, but that money was pretty much useless for me because I couldn't do anything that I wanted with it. Like I was like, I don't want to do stock research because all I want to do is sleep.
Yeah,
Still
you
did
get
it,
home, you eat, you
but
shower, you go to bed, you get up and you do it again, right?
doing that was just not for me. And I might do it again during the summer, but I will probably only do a couple days a week because during summer, I'm not teaching. My hours are kind of more free, so I might just be like, okay, maybe I'll just work for them 2 or 3 days a week. So that way I'm still doing something active. And because usually it was like by Thursday or Friday, I felt dead. And I was like, no. But maybe 2 days a week might be better, or 3 days. I don't know. I don't need to make as much money because my investments pay for a decent amount of my life if I need to anyway. And my living expenses are so low that I
Okay,
could work
actually,
less.
I'm glad we're gonna hopefully end off here shortly. But Sandstone Davy says try wearing an 8-pound tactical vest 12 hours a day in the Florida heat. So Charter, let's talk about
Charter did that stuff.
bombs in Afghanistan.
No, let's talk about wearing a 95-pound bomb suit in the heat in Afghanistan.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, so I was like 310 pounds. Yeah, like in my bomb suit, I was like 310 pounds.
Am I about to blow up, right?
Yeah, well, so that was the weird thing is like it was stressful, but at the end of the day, like I knew I either did it right or it was someone else's problem, and so that oddly enough brought a certain amount of peace to me.
Wow, that's when you say if you do it
Was
right
that
or
when you're in
someone
the
else's
military,
problem,
right?
mean that you're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's it. Our motto is initial success or total failure, and so like we really live by that. You either did it completely right the first time, or you don't get a second chance.
Right. Wow, that's scary to even think about being in that position. And I'm guessing it's got to be just as intense as the way you see it in the movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, yeah, and it's they portray it as high intensity, like 24/7. And that's just not the case. Like I would go when I was in Afghanistan 2 or 3 weeks and not see anything at all. And then you've got, basically, a minute and a half to 2 minutes of just the most intense lifestyle that you could ever imagine. And then it's over. That's just how it is. But that, minute and a half to 2 minutes, it's just so physically and emotionally draining. It's really difficult to explain to somebody that's never been in that situation. And of course, we would go on calls, and I was, how I got my start in robotics was disarming bombs with robots, which is why I do what I do now. But even that, I'm operating it through a remote control and, looking at it through a screen. But, that's still, it's got its own amounts of stress, because I knew that if I wasn't able to get this done with the robot, then my team leader was having to get in the bomb suit and he was having to go deal with this. And then, there was a couple of instances where I was out there, with him, and we were both getting hands-on with him. And it's just, it's a bunch of different variables of stress that I never thought I would go through, but it's made civilian life relatively stress-free, because once you've done that, it puts everything else into perspective, and I just don't care about other stuff now.
Yeah, I can definitely see how it puts other things into perspective. All of a sudden, everything else in life is a lot less stressful than that, I'm sure, right?
I haven't found anything as stressful, so yeah.
So just to Sandstone Davies respect, I think we can all agree, just huge respect on that one.
I appreciate it.
Wow, guys, we've been going for almost an hour and 20 minutes. Thank you guys so much for coming on and joining me here on this edition of the Passive Income Podcast live stream roundtable. I'm very glad, Charter, that you were able to stick with it. I know we've had plans for several different guests. Kage, I'm glad you were able to just kind of pinch hit, basically come in and, just half an hour before we started, you were like, what live stream? I'm like, here's the link. Thank you for coming on as well. Before we wrap it up, any final thoughts?
Dave, I just appreciate you giving me the chance to come on and talk. I've been, listening to your YouTube channel for probably about 5 or 6 weeks now, and I've really enjoyed some of the guests that you've had on here. And I'll make sure to listen to the ads all the way through in the future episodes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you having me on. I guess my other takeaway is invest in things that you understand. Don't invest in things you don't understand. That's when people
and don't just follow the leader, like you were saying earlier. Like, just because I'm doing something doesn't mean you have to do it. Going back to what I said, do your own research.
I realize people will follow you blindly.
Yeah.
Please don't. I'm not here giving financial advice. The Passive Income Podcast, we're just people talking. Like this episode, we're just people talking. And all the one-on-one episodes, it's just people having conversations about investing. It's definitely not financial advice. It's, basically for entertainment purposes. If you get something out of it and you hear about a stock you've never heard about before, and you go and do your own research on it, hey, that's great, right? But don't just blindly follow people.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, guys. With that said, there's one more.
This is Sandstone. He said he subbed.
Really? You haven't been subscribed already?
Wow, Sandstone.
Thanks, Sandstone Davey, for the sub. And that's a great segue to end it with. If you are still here an hour and nearly 20 minutes later, please be sure to hit subscribe.